Let's look at Pennsylvania's response to Tropical Storm Lee, next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Are you dry?
For the most part, I'm beginning to mold, but otherwise I'm all right.
No, I don't think that.
I think everybody is, though.
Yes, but I think all of us were wet, and of course, Pennsylvania and the eastern seaboard of the United States have just experienced one of the greatest natural disasters in our time. Us old folks remember Hurricane Agnes back in 1972, and it visited lots of disruption and destruction upon Pennsylvania as well. And you told me you were actually around. I can't believe you were around at that point.
Returning from a family vacation in the horrendous rainfall during Agnes. Yes.
Well, we're fortunate today to be able to talk about the effect of these storms of Lee and Irene on Pennsylvania. And with us, we have the _1 person in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to talk about that, and that is Mr. Glenn Cannon. Welcome to the show. Mr. Cannon, you are the director of the Pennsylvania
Emergency Management Agency.
Okay.
And the governor's Homeland Security Advisor.
Okay, so you, in a way, you wear two hats.
I do.
Okay. Was that always true that these two positions were the same?
It was not.
Okay.
There was great difficulty with Homeland Security and getting it right in the last administration, so the governor did things differently this time.
Well, we're very lucky and very grateful that you could come today and share some time with us, because you've been one of the most in-demand individuals in the Commonwealth for the last several weeks, and thank you for joining us. We were wondering if you could give us a little bit of background about, now that Lee has gone away, if you could sort of give us the big picture of what Pennsylvania experienced during this most recent storm.
Sure. Let me back up just a little bit for context. Since April 25th, this is Pennsylvania's 5th presidential disaster declaration.
Wow.
It started with very heavy spring floods that we had that damaged 5 counties in northeastern Pennsylvania severely. The president issued that declaration in July, but the event was actually in April. And then we went into, in August, Hurricane Irene, and then 10 days later, Tropical Storm Lee. And so while we were still very active with the damages from Irene, Lee came and made it much, much worse. And so where we are now is that we finished the active response phase of our mission of saving people's lives, getting them out of harm's way, evacuating them to shelters. That part, which was very, very busy for short 24-hour periods of time, we've now slowed down, where we're moving water, we're moving food, we're moving resources to shelters, we're feeding people. We still have a number of shelters open in Pennsylvania occupied by folks. And as the water recedes, only now, and probably this weekend, will people in many places be able to go back into their homes. And so while the active response phase is closed, we are in a very active recovery phase. And I've tried to let my people know that while, the hands-on life-saving mission is over, this is still a life-saving mission. When you come back and find that everything you had in your life that you valued is gone, and you don't know, maybe where you work is now underwater or has been damaged, so you're laid off as well. You didn't have any flood insurance to help you with this. There's an overwhelming hopelessness that happens to people. So I've made sure that everyone involved understands that while this is recovery, this is still life-saving. The mission of our agency is to save lives and reduce suffering, and then protect property and the environment when we can. We're in the transition from saving lives to reduce suffering right now, and it is significant.
Well, I know it'll probably be weeks and weeks before we see the actual numbers, but there are some preliminary estimates of, I think I've seen 4,500 homes and businesses destroyed or damaged. I haven't even seen the dollar amount because of the extent of the geographic coverage of it so far, but it's really overwhelming.
There are two kinds of federal assistance that come with the presidential declaration. One is called individual assistance. That helps people and businesses. The other is called public assistance, and that's roads and bridges and government buildings that have been destroyed, that kind of thing. We focused all of our effort on getting the required numbers we needed for the individual assistance declaration first. And you're exactly right. They measure that in categories of affected by the incident, moderate damage, major damage, and totally destroyed. Just looking at the majors and totals, we were able to get the presidential declaration for 43 counties in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So now we're back out doing the activity related to the other side, and just PennDOT on state roads and bridges, they've got over $400 million worth of damage.
What was it? Wasn't it around 300 roads closed at one point?
At one time we were up to almost 600 roads
Almost
closed.
600, oh my goodness.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We still have, I think it's 14 water treatment plants closed and 12 sewage plants closed. And most of the sewage treatment plants are along the rivers. And so as the sewage systems flood, you may know, they bypass raw sewage right into the water. When the treatment plants are closed, that's what happens. And so when you've heard us saying over and over about this water being toxic, not only is it loaded with bio waste, but it's also then the oils and the gases and the critters that are dead and all those kind of things. I've seen some photos of kids in their flip-flops. We don't want that to be happening. And so we've taken lots of steps along those. I mean, right now we've got 15 counties we're actually going to do spraying over because of mosquitoes. Still water breeds mosquitoes in that kind of an environment. So we're trying to look at the impacts on families, communities, businesses, and also we don't want a public health emergency, nor do we want an environmental emergency. So all of our actions are geared on that big picture, but we're focused like a laser on helping people. And yesterday, if you probably saw some news reports that we opened 7 disaster recovery centers, literally, 30 hours after the president's declaration. It was unheard of. And again, I have to give our governor credit. In our bureaucracy, he has banned the words "no" and "I can't" from this event. A few years ago, I read a book called Banishing Bureaucracy. You've probably read it, Charlie. I actually got to say to people yesterday, we're banishing bureaucracy. And we are doing things faster than anybody ever believed that state government could do, as they're aimed at helping families and individuals.
Well, it certainly seems to be a state government and local government response. We seem to be bouncing back more quickly than we did from Agnes. How does this event compare to Agnes?
Well, actually, while the flooding is not as widespread, it was more intense and caused more problems in the areas it was. We had an interesting situation. So I think what I'm going to say to you is that the damage is going to be greater than Agnes. One of the problems we've run into with using Agnes as a benchmark for different things happened to us up in Wilkes-Barre. Wilkes-Barre, when they were planning to evacuate the community, told folks, if you live in an area that was flooded by Agnes, you need to get out. They thought, well, Agnes was 39 years ago, and there are lots of young folks that had no idea what that message meant. So we have to do different messaging now. We have to identify it with different landmarks rather than saying that goes in the lessons learned category, that we forget those things as time goes by. So it is going to be, I think, the end of the day, the damage, when we finally get it all tabulated, will be greater than Agnes.
Well, let's talk about flash flooding for just a moment. We had some incredible flash flooding issues out in the Pittsburgh area this year, and then just overwhelming flash floods in the Hershey area, just like nobody's ever seen before.
That's right.
So I know you have some messages for some people out there regarding when flash flood warnings are posted.
Absolutely. What happens on the front end is when these heavy cells come through and they park themselves over an area. And prior to this storm, remember we had Hurricane Irene just 10 days before
It
this.
saturated us.
And then in August, we had some of the most significant rains. So our ground was saturated. Our ground was 75% over normal, for moisture. Our streams were at a 90% level because of those storms. So then you get this water, intense water, in a very short period of time. The National Weather Service begins to issue flash flood warnings. People need to pay attention to that more and more. This storm, the ones in Pittsburgh, I guess now it must be almost a month ago. I lose track sometimes, but where the woman and her 2 children were killed, they were covered in 9 feet of water. We have a message to everybody, and the governor messaged it, the lieutenant governor messaged it, I message it, all the media releases we do, it says, turn around, don't drown. It's a pretty simple thing.
Yeah.
Don't drive into water. First off, we had a person in this storm in 1.5 feet of water was washed away and drowned. 1.5 feet of water. People don't know the power of the water, the force with which it will move you. In a couple inches of water, cars can begin to float. So it's people think they can drive through. The other thing that happens in flash flooding is that the roadway gets undermined. All right, so you're driving along, you say, oh, this water's just up to my hubcaps or the middle of my wheel, I can drive through this. But you don't know there's a 15-foot sinkhole out there that looks like it's the same level of what you're on, but till you hit it.
Yeah.
And now suddenly you're in 15 feet of water. Turn around, don't drown. It's a simple message, but it saves lives. And I think it helped us immensely in this storm.
What is the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, what is your budget? How many people do you have? In other words, what were the resources that you had, Glenn, to work with this?
My budget is in pretty bad shape, to tell you the truth. Had it not been for the direct intervention of Governor Corbett, we would not have had enough people to handle this event. When we activate our Emergency Operations Center to our highest level of activation, which is level 1, which is all hands on deck. It's a TMI kind of an activation. And we did that for this storm. And just again, the last time it was activated was on 9/11/2001, that it went to level 1. Well, it takes me 74 folks for a 12-hour shift. So 24 hours, I need 148 people. When I came in January 18th, I had 143 people if no one was sick and took a day off. And I told the governor that we were 1/2 step away from being non-mission capable. The last 8 years, PEMA had been eviscerated. Staff had been cut continually. Budgets had not been funded. And so the chief agency for providing emergency response to not just weather events, but a terrorist event, any man-made activity, a nuclear power plant problem, all that is coordinated by PEMA. We didn't have the folks to do that. So when you ask me if we had enough resources, the answer is barely, barely. And we need to continue to work to try to, it's hard to recover 8 years worth of damage in 6 months.
Now the National Guard came in and helped. How much of a help was the National Guard, and what did they do?
They're outstanding. Our Adjutant General, General Craig, and I communicate daily, oftentimes multiple times during the day. Initially the Guard, we do something different than what was done before. We call it leaning forward. When we know there's a bad event coming, we pre-deploy. We move resources and assets to the area that's going to be impacted and have them staged before the event impacts. Yeah. If you think about the Guard and them being citizen soldiers, if we have a bad event, whether it's a flooding event like this or a snowstorm event, they have the same issues getting to the armories and their equipment as anybody else does when they're activated. So you don't wait. If you wait until you're in the event, you have lost already. So we lean forward. This time, well, for Irene, we had 1,500 Guards persons in their armories with their high water vehicles staffed, supplies loaded up, waters, MREs, if you remember, and
ready to eat meals.
Ready to go. We even had elements of what we call our Striker Brigade, very large vehicles that we are the only Guard in the country that has one. So that was done. We did the same thing for Tropical Storm Lee. The Guard is established into 3 task forces, north, south, and west. And so we activated, in this case, we activated north, south, and a small contingent in the west for backing them up. Initially, the Guard's role was rescue. They did a lot of rescues with their high water vehicles. They moved goods to shelters for us. Their helicopters flew and actually lifted people in the two events together. People that were cut off because there are two ways, two ends of a road that you turn up into where they are, and the bridges on both ends are gone. Yeah. And so there they are, isolated. We lifted people in, put them on the ground, made sure they had medical care, food, water, and then we lifted them out. So all of that pre-deployment of assets was there for the Guard. And at one point in Tropical Storm Lee, we were up over 1,800 Guards persons. Now, as the response phase comes down, then the Guard moves into more of that support role. We pushed out to our counties, if I can recall the number, over 10,000 cases of MREs and over 43 cases of water into our different counties that were affected by this. And the Guard, I have to tell you, not just the Guard, we started getting tractor trailer loads in from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and we staged them out at the Gap, at the Indiantown Gap. And then the Guard and the Liquor Control Board, if you can imagine. And we figured, who else moves stuff all the time? Well, Liquor Control Board moves boxes of liquor all over the state. So with the Guard and the Liquor Control Board, and then recently the Department of Corrections using prisoners, we've moved water and supplies around to the Commonwealth. And what never happened before was, there's two ways to get supplies to somebody. You can push it, or you can wait until they ask you and they pull it. We pushed everything. We did not wait. When someone is drowning, you don't need to wait till they come up for the third time before you throw that life ring. We know what's going to happen. We know the situation's going to get worse, and so we just lean forward.
Well, as we're wrapping up our segment here, can you tell us where people can go to get more information about your agency and thereby find some information about...
If you go to the PEMA website,
okay.
pema.pa.gov, is that right? Okay, and then the other website is FEMA's website, which if you go to disasterassistance.gov, that gets you there. And FEMA now, because we've opened registration centers where people can go and apply for help. Yesterday, the first 24 hours we were open, over 10,000 people applied for aid. Good. And already, again, one of those things that's unheard of, over $76,000 of aid has already been approved for people in Pennsylvania. Okay. So you can go to the 1-800 number for FEMA, which is 1-800-621-FEMA, and register over the phone or register online.
Great.
Okay, we thank you for that, and the people of Pennsylvania, thank you for your service and for all the good efforts that the administration and your agency has made in this time of need. So
thanks, Charlie.
You're welcome. Thank you. We'll be back with the second and concluding segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. Maura and I in this segment are joined by Scott Wagner, who's a member of the Susquehanna Valley Center as Board of Directors, and who is the owner, the president and CEO of Penn Waste. Scott, welcome back to the show.
How are you? Good morning.
Hi.
why we were just talking about the state of the natural disaster that has hit Pennsylvania and how we're struggling to recover from it. And we certainly find that businesses are played a major role in trying to recover from this. And businesses have had their own calamities as well to deal with recently. As we struggle to recover as a state, and as we struggle to try to bolster and build our state economy, you found out that we are hitting up against one problem after the other. And one of the major problems is the amount of regulation that businesses, small businesses, businesses of all sizes are actually encountering. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
What are some of the problems as we try to rebuild the economy, Scott? You are one of the leading business individuals in all of South Central Pennsylvania and Eastern Pennsylvania. You know this as well as anyone. What are the regulations that you are struggling with, and all the businesses are struggling with as we try to build jobs?
Well, Charlie, that's a great question. You know, I have a listing of really all the regulations that Penn Waste has to report on, whether it's federal, state, and local, and it's, you know, it's approximately 6 pages, and it's, you know, 60 items. Now, we've missed some items, and I tell you, this list will probably grow by 5 to 10 more reporting items as the Obama healthcare bill becomes phased in.
Now, these are state or federal or both?
Well, these, and actually I've broken it down, but these are all federal, state, and local. But then we've broken down the federal regulations, and we're down to 17. So if you add on another 5 to 10 for the Obama healthcare bill reporting requirements, you're going to add another 5 or 10. So you add 10, we're going to be up to maybe 25 to 27.
You need to hire more just to deal with all the paperwork, don't you?
It's going to be a lot of man hours for that.
It is, and I think what's happened, we have probably 25 to 30 people within our company at Penn Waste, maybe residential supervisors that are monitoring waste transportation logs for the day for the trucks that they would oversee and supervise. I might have 5 supervisors that spend 30 minutes a day. I may have someone else who spends an hour and a half a day throughout the day. But clearly, this is without exaggeration, Charlie and Mara, that in a period of a year, this year, 2011 at Penn Waste, we will spend between 7,500 and 10,000 labor hours. And that's men and women working throughout our company to comply with all this regulation. Now, Charlie, I asked you earlier before the show, and I didn't want to startle you, but I asked you a question. If I were to take my hands and I were to wrap them around your neck and start choking you, what would happen? We discussed briefly that you would turn the color of your shirt, and then within another minute you'd turn darker like your sport coat, and then you would eventually just hit the ground. Well, we're being choked in business, and this isn't just Penn Waste. This is, you know, construction companies, beer distributors, trucking companies, you know, a cat dealer, you know, anybody that has a certain number of employees. Now, when I say that, it doesn't affect.
You're being choked by government regulation.
Yeah, it's every day we turn around. There's something else, and if you could think about the 7,500 to 10,000 labor hours that I described that we have to use within our company every year just to comply, and we could take that manpower and we could use it on research and development. I mean, at Penn Waste, we do a lot of research and development. We're constantly looking at new recycling markets. What can we do with recyclables? How can we handle them more efficiently? So if we were able to take all these labor hours and divert them over to research and development, we could add more jobs. I mean, I personally have a proven track record at Penn Waste. Penn Waste was started in year 2000. We have 307 employees today. So I've created jobs, and I know other businesses that have created jobs. But again, I could fill this room. It would be easy. If we had a calling all business people that are being choked in the state of Pennsylvania, we probably could fill this building.
You said you have how many employees? 300
This morning on our employee count, 307 employees.
307, and Maura, he said that, Scott, you said that you have 30 of those are dealing exclusively with government rules and regulations?
I would say approximately 30. There's
So you have almost 10% of your total workforce, and it's devoted to trying to keep up with government rules and regulations.
Correct. I mean, you know, on a state level, every one of our waste trucks that is traveling out there today has to have a waste transportation log in the truck documenting where the waste came from, what municipality. Did it come from City of Harrisburg? Did it come from Susquehanna Township? Come from Camp Hill Borough? At the end of the day, we log those tickets in. We have to keep those tickets for a period of time, and it's massive storage of documents. We put a scanning system in 2005 in our company in April. Between April of 2005 and the end of the year, we scanned 2 million documents.
Wow.
We now probably scan somewhere between 7 and 10 million documents a year. I mean, we're into like our 7th upgrade on our DocStar scanning system. So it is just incredible what's happening out there, and we're just one business.
Well, what's the answer? I mean, you know that overnight these aren't going to go away.
Well, here's the answer. Number one, here's I'm going to be very direct. We need more people in government that have run businesses and have business experience. And I'm very proud to tell you that this Friday, my company, I also own a small trucking company. It has about 60 employees, dump trucks and dump trailers. And we operate in dump trucks in 4 states, tractor trailers in 25 to 30 states. But the difference, I'm really very proud of this. That this is a paycheck from Penn Waste, and as I mentioned this morning, we will issue 307 of these this Friday at Penn Waste, and at KBS Inc., another 60, so we're approaching 400, plus we have owner-operator trucks. But the distinction is, my name's on the front of the paycheck. My name has been on the front of paychecks. I started my first waste company in 1985. I'm proud of that. Penn Waste is a golden goose. It lays golden eggs every Friday. And when this employee, and this is we've dummied this check up, but this is exactly what a paycheck looks like. But this is my signature, Scott R. Wagner, President of Penn Waste. My name's it's not on the back. This is where you sign the back of a paycheck when you're cashing or endorsing it. I would say that easily 90% of the people in Harrisburg and Washington sign the back of the check and have never signed the front of a check, and it could be as high as 95%. And I live in a world where I have a 4-letter word that I live with every day as a business person. It's risk. What happens if one of my trucks, sideswipes a school bus today, and there's, bad injuries of children, or, many things could happen. And where we, there's, for example, there was a business in Hanover a couple weeks ago that had an explosion. And I heard on the news this morning that one of the people involved, one of the workers, did not survive. It's risk, and you know what? I don't get up every day thinking I want to send my trucks out to kill people, or the business owner doesn't operate a manufacturing plant and say I want to, blow my plant up and have injuries or fatalities. So the answer is, number one, we have got to stop all this regulation. I mean, we should have somebody introduce a bill that we're not going to introduce any more regulation or legislation, Harrisburg and Washington, for the next 4 years. And we're going to deal with this, and we're going to downscale.
Okay, so less regulation and more government officials that understand economics and business will be a good step in the right direction to recovering our economy. We'll be back next week with a new edition of Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.